In 1987, something fascinating happened in Puget Sound. An orca, one of those magnificent killer whales, decided to flaunt a quirky fashion statement. She balanced a deceased salmon on her head like it was a trendy hat. This odd behavior started with just one orca sporting the fishy headgear, but soon enough, it caught on among other orca groups. However, as time passed, this peculiar trend faded away, so don't expect to spot any salmon-wearing orcas on your next whale-watching trip anytime soon. But this whole episode was a delightful, albeit a bit smelly, example of how seemingly random behaviors can become the in thing among orcas. Yet, decades later, orca trends took a more hazardous turn. Fast forward to the early 2020s, amid all the other things happening globally, we discovered that orcas in the Strait of Gibraltar had a peculiar habit. They were sinking boats, and not just any boats, but they seemed to have a preference for sailboats and a knack for targeting their vulnerable spots, like the rudders. Now, an occasional bump from an orca isn't unheard of, but the number of these incidents was on the rise. In 2020, there were only 52 reported cases of orcas supposedly attacking boats in and around the Strait of Gibraltar. By 2023, this number had skyrocketed to 207, resulting in at least 3 yacht sinkings. In 2023, an orca even rammed into a yacht in the North Sea, near Scotland. This was far enough from Spain and Portugal to make folks worry that the behavior might be spreading. However, recent research suggests that these orca encounters may not be attacks at all. A study found that when wild orcas were presented with fake rudders, their behavior seemed more playful than aggressive. They appeared to be gently nudging the rudders with their noses until they broke, rather than launching a full-blown attack. While this might not be comforting if you're on the receiving end of such a nudge, it does shed some light on why orcas might be toying with rudders. Simply put, they see their pals doing it, and it's fun. For the orcas, it's possibly just a cool new game. Unfortunately for us, orcas weigh between 3 to 7 metric tons, so the game isn't quite as amusing from our perspective. There are a couple of theories about how this game began. The first theory suggests it might have started as a response to trauma. Some believe an individual orca named White Gladys might have been the first to break rudders, possibly due to a traumatic encounter with fishing lines. Other orcas in her group began imitating her, turning the behavior into a sort of game, even among those without negative boat-related experiences. The second theory suggests that it was all in good fun from the start. Young orcas are naturally curious, and they might have found ships interesting enough to invent a game that eventually caught on. While we can't say for sure which theory is correct, experts anticipate that this trend will eventually fizzle out, much like human fads such as pet rocks or silly bands. As long as it sticks around, though, it provides us with a chance to learn more about orca intelligence and culture. Yes, culture. Despite our tendency to associate culture solely with humans, it turns out orcas have their own cultural traits. Orcas possess the ability to imitate actions, a sign of intelligence in the animal kingdom. This means they can learn to do things just by observing others, rather than figuring it out themselves. Action imitation is a significant aspect of culture. Cultures involve behaviors acquired through social learning, and orcas fit the bill since they can imitate actions. Cultures also include traditions that are specific to certain groups within a species. Orcas exhibit this as well. For instance, certain resident orca pods in British Columbia have unique behaviors like rubbing themselves on pebbly beaches, a practice not shared by other pods. Orcas in the Salish Sea engage in more playful activities, like slapping fins and leaping into the air more often than other pods. They also have distinct food preferences, which vary even when they share the same habitat. Some orca pods have elaborate greeting ceremonies, and their vocalizations carry regional accents. Even mating choices seem to be influenced by pod culture, as orcas tend to prefer mates with different-sounding calls to avoid inbreeding. The third aspect of culture involves passing behaviors down to the next generation, resulting in the accumulation and refinement of cultural traits over time. While the extent of knowledge transfer in orcas is debatable, they follow a matrilineal system, traveling with their mother's pod. The oldest female, the matriarch, accumulates and passes knowledge to successive generations since orcas can live over 60 years. During the Gibraltar incidents, both groups of orcas involved had matriarchs present. In White Gladys's pod, her mother observed but didn't interact with the boats. It was White Gladys, her younger siblings, and her calves engaging in the behavior. Aside from the pod in Scotland, which seemed to have picked up the behavior, most recent boat interactions were caused by a small group of individual orcas likely learning from one another. Since their behavior appears to be more playful than hostile, it seems this trend is more like an exclusive clique of orcas rather than an orchestrated revolution. It wouldn't be the first time orcas came up with new games. Young orcas have been spotted grabbing onto the tails of older individuals, letting themselves be towed along. They've also indulged in unique fashion statements like wearing fish corpses as accessories, but just like any other trend, it'll eventually fade away. So instead of worrying about an uprising at sea, we'll probably have to wait for the orcas to grow bored and move on to their next big thing. Like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos like this one. Thank you for watching.